The works of Suda51, if you don't already know, often exists on the spectrum of weird to what the f did I just watch?
I'm not wearing anything but a smile. How about you?
Oh my god, 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 showing!
Now that is a big boner.
Huh?
It's hard to really describe a Suda51 game to the uninitiated, but you can at least be sure of one thing. You're in for a crazy ride where the rabbit hole never ends. And while cult classics like No More Heroes, Shadows of the Damned, Lollipop Chainsaw, and If Your Back Hurts, The Silver Case are some of his craziest and most intricate works to date, but another notable title that really stuck for a lot of gamers was Killer7. An amalgamation of on-rail shooting, puzzle solving, highly stylized storytelling with a very art house flair, Killer7 was an iconic game for both the PlayStation 2 and GameCube era. I actually never got the chance to play Killer7 back in ye old CRT TV Melee days, but I did pick it up on Steam when the remaster was bestowed upon our mortal hands. But I never did get to finish it because I just couldn't find the right mood. Plus, so many damn games coming out all at once. But now with my eagerness dawning on me to finally beat it, and totally not related to the game being 20 years old now, it was time to see what made this game a Suda51 cult classic and see how much it's held up.
Yes, this is it. The feeling, it's coming back to me.
To explain the story of Killer7, you'll need a couple things. A PhD in socioeconomics, a master's in US history and Japanese relations, a bachelor's in psychology, and a culinary degree. Okay, maybe not the first three, but definitely a culinary degree. Killer7's story is a combination of military political drama, neo-noir storytelling, and psychologically complex characters where you'll be scrambling to understand just what the heck was Suda trying to do here.
Hi.
Taking place in an alternate 21st century where international conflict is no longer a thing and nuclear weapons are being decommissioned, world peace is actually being achieved. However, in the rise of this worldwide Heiwa era, a new terrorist group known as the Heaven Smile threatens the United Nations. At the same time, this also leads to pressure between Japan's nationwide power and the relationship with the US. All of this serves essentially as a background to the involvement of a group known as the Killer7, a body of 7 highly trained assassins who are in fact physically and mentally manifested through their leader, one Harmon Smith. Garcian Smith, one of the personalities, is the de facto second in command among the group and acts as the mediator between Harmon's awakened conscience, because apparently this is what it's like when he's not conscious.
It's really good. Open your mouth. Eat, damn it!
So with the assassin group taking on contracts from the US government alongside the ongoing political climate, the Killer7 are involved in more than just a few contracts. It's an extremely complicated satirical story, which I still don't think I've properly made sense of it just yet. And there's a lot that you really have to sink your teeth into in order to understand the internal workings of each party. But while trying to make sense of the Suda51 narrative is like trying to decipher why the Joker has a long-term relationship with Batman,
I caught a little Pokemon.
For good or bad, there's a world that Grasshopper Studios have made that is quite unlike any other. A lot of it is attributed to the characters who bring the narrative to life. Harmon Smith is an enigmatic figure whose involvement and mentoring of the Killer7 group is shrouded in so much mystery.
Nothing has changed for 30 years.
Garcian Smith is more than just a simple middleman for the Killer7 personas. Kun Lan, a godlike entity and the primary antagonist that knows how to pull the world's strings.
The size of the world has changed. It's changed to the size where you can control it with your hands, just like a PDA.
They're the big players who set up the stage in showing their level of influence. But beyond them are also the other characters of the game who enrich the world with all manner of outlandish and insane personalities that Killer7 is often famous for. More Suda51 actually, but still. Characters like Iwazaru, who is the equivalent of Na'vi from The Legend of Zelda, but literally your ghost guide and dressed in a gimp suit. Travis, who was the Killer7's first contract, gives you very introspective advice and warnings across various missions. contractor Christopher Mills, who provides the group with various government-affiliated missions, as well as some personal advice for Garcian.
You can't last in this business relying on feelings, but I trust you know that.
And of course, the Killer7 group, who barely speak throughout the game, but make a very strong impression with their attitudes and few spoken words.
I'm not a monster, it's only a mask.
Sorry, pal, but this is the moment I've been waiting for.
It's this weird amalgamation of insane, serious, political, psychological, and crazy that defines Killer7. It gives the game its sense of identity and narrative that make it so unique nearly 20 years later. Even when I've dabbled in Suda's other wacky works, like No More Heroes or Shadows of the Damned, which I also really like, nothing has ever gotten close to the substance that Killer7 has brought. There's also things that extend beyond themselves with more symbolic and metaphorical representation of parties and their juxtapositions to each other. Even character personalities within the Killer7 group can be psychoanalyzed based on their backstories, which you learn a lot later. A really intriguing and mysterious story that brought me in, but I do have to mention at least one thing that almost turned me off, and that was how much Iwazaru speaks in the first level. Like actual levels of Na'vi all over the map. It's not that I didn't want to listen to him, but because of his speaking pace being borderline slow, it was really tedious having to hear him talk constantly. Thankfully, it's not like this throughout each level, and I never had that feeling of annoyance ever again. Except this one dead politician whose conversation is 5 times longer than it should be. I will say though, actual voiceover dialogue is pretty sparse during each level, and you'll largely be interacting with the dead characters who speak in remixed tongues while you read their subtitles. How much you want to hear their dialogue and the overall world building will vary based on your interest and patience, because despite how creepy and thematic they sound, it does start to feel monotonous by the 100th time. Interestingly enough, the Japanese version actually uses, from what I've heard so far, broken Japanese English for the ghosts, so it's an interesting twist on the gibberish that they normally talk with.
It is doing seriously being rumors. The manservant of the master. Rambo Dilbor sound was unscored.
So overall, whether its complex and outlandish nature is a benefit or detriment to the game's enjoyment, because yes, the story is definitely not for everyone, but for my liking, it's exactly what makes it such a gem that I still think about the game even after finishing it. 20 years going by, and still a very unique narrative with barely anything like it. Maybe something like Kojima or Swery in the what did I just play department, but you'll be hard pressed to find a very politically dark satire like Killer7's world. I would like to describe the gameplay of Killer7 as something that mixes ye old on-rail shooters, first-person shooters as well, and classic puzzle solving, something akin to Resident Evil, and a couple of point-and-click adventures. When the game's more than 1 hour long cutscene story and dialogue isn't slapping you cleanly in the face, you'll be hoofing it as the Killer7 group, taking on contracts involving the elimination of the Heaven Smile organization, and ultimately taking care of the contract for that mission. The movement is literally the on-rails portion where you simply press a button and your character starts moving along a predetermined line. You have the option to go back and forth, while also picking junctions to diverge to, like rooms or other paths. The core combat gameplay is the Killer7 fighting the Heaven Smile FPS style. You get to control a single member of the group, and they more or less operate the same mechanically, but have different attributes to them, like Con Smith being fast but fragile, Kaede being a sniper, Dan being an all-rounder but also has a charge shot ability, Mask being a luchador,
I'm not a monster, it's only a mask.
Coyote being Mario, and Kevin being the biggest Naruto fan. Though he should run like a proper anime ninja. While controlling a character, pressing the trigger changes to an FPS perspective where you'll have to shoot at enemies and stand your ground, because this is still that era of games where moving and shooting wasn't a thing for Capcom yet. Also yes, I almost forgot that this is a Capcom produced game. What makes shooting the Heaven Smile enemies more interesting is that you have to target specific weak points on their bodies. Doing so will automatically destroy them and give you blood, which you can use to upgrade the abilities of each member. You can still defeat them by shooting other body parts until they go down, but they won't give as much blood as a result, sometimes even none.
What's that smell?
I wouldn't say the combat is a must-play despite its unique genre amalgamation, but it did hold my interest as the main gameplay loop. I did actually enjoy the whole experience with standing your ground while shooting the enemies, and it reminded me a bit of House of the Dead or Resident Evil 4. Not quite a horror game, but I did have that sort of anxiety feeling where my shots needed to be on point, otherwise I was dead. Though I did have some jump scares. There's not much depth to the character roster in the sense that you have to make use of everyone other than for puzzle purposes, but just enough nuance that you can at least pick your favorites for your preferred style. Mine were mainly Khan, Coyote, and Dan. Coyote is not that much different from Dan, but his voice line for landing a critical hit is why I chose him.
You're fucked.
Yeah, tell him like it is. What did make the combat consistently entertaining for me was the enemy design. Anytime you enter certain areas of a map, or even reload into an area that you've already visited, there will almost always be enemies there waiting for you, meaning that you have to engage with combat at every turn. It can be a bit tiresome in certain scenarios, but it at least never felt boring for me. The game also has some good progressive enemy difficulty in that as you near the end of the story, there's always several new enemies introduced in a mission, and you'll have to figure out the most effective way to beat them, whether with good aim, finding their gimmicks, or using Mask the Smith because he'll just raise everything to the ground. There's also a number of bosses that were more puzzle than actual shooty combat, but I did enjoy trying to find the solution to beat them, even if some weren't the most straightforward. My only biggest gripe with the actual combat is how inaccurate the shooting can be. I kind of get it in that it's meant to be this way, otherwise the game might be too easy, but there were times where even if the shots were perfectly lined up, it still missed completely. This inaccuracy even killed me a couple of times because letting one enemy slip through would cause a chain reaction of explosions and my character would just die.
Another one.
I could have switched to keyboard and mouse since I am playing on the PC remake, but I wasn't nearly frustrated enough that I wanted to escape the console experience. Other than that, the combat was quite enjoyable. I also did like that there was an update last year which added the ability to swap between characters on the fly, making it a lot faster than having to go into the menu. I think I would have been okay with the former system, but it's a welcome quality of life change that makes the game feel better for modern playthroughs. Alongside the shooting, you'll be doing a large number of puzzles that includes using a key item to unlock doors, using very weird items to solve specific puzzles, I didn't know equipping rings would make you the Avatar, to memorizing visual or offbeat information in order to pass certain puzzles. They're not that complicated, and when you properly use the items, characters, or just noting down the correct information for later, they offered a nice break in between the combat. Though some solutions are pretty left field, to be honest. Well, how am I supposed to know? I can't count that high. I'm also happy that the game is at least nice enough that the map has detailed hints as to where you should go in case you get lost, because oh boy, it would have felt like classic Resident Evil doing a whole bunch of backtracking had it not been there. I like the overall gameplay, and while I don't think it feels like something that is a must-play, nor is it really anything revolutionary, it is a very unique feeling game that hits differently, enough to be fun for some, including myself.
I've changed my makeup. Did you notice?
Killer7 isn't the most technically advanced game for its time, and I could honestly list numerous titles of its era whose graphics are technically superior. But because of its art direction and its use of cinematography in cutscenes and even gameplay, Killer7 is highly stylized that the graphics themselves don't feel old at all. Sure, I'm playing on the PC remaster with better anti-aliasing and HD visuals, but even if I were to look at it through a melee player's TV that they picked up from someone's front porch, the style would still look very distinct. On the more technical side, it is very simple in just about every aspect. The character models have basic animations like mouth movements, eyes widening, or simple joint movement. Heck, even the ghosts don't have mouth movements for gibberish talking. But you can at least tell this game doesn't come from a much older generation, something like the N64 and back. Same thing with the environments, which are also extremely simple in their polygonal shape, where everything has a lot of simple straight lines with little to no curvature. It helps that it mostly takes place in an urban city setting and in a lot of indoor closed spaces, so there's a lot of squares and rectangles being used. Though I will say that the enemies look creepy thanks to the game's simple design. Shadow casting is also there, and it actually looks pretty good, even though it's not the most dynamic. But despite the graphical simplicity of it all, the art style is what gives the game its visual identity. The high contrasting colors of each of the different environments, the almost noir-esque shading in the background, the cinema-like feel of the camera angles, it's just a distinctly stylistic game that makes effective use of its cel-shaded art. Even the gore modeling looks gruesome on account of the high color contrast. Other visual distinctions include the mission select screen, the TV monitor with its blood or character selection, the effects of the enemies disintegrating and your character changing, or even the cutaways to your character reloading. A lot of effort into enhancing Killer7's unique visual design, and I can barely think of any games that share the same distinction, even with some having the same cel shading composition. The sound design is also amazing. The effects come from a wide range of different foley and noises to enhance certain objects. More real-world effects like guns, footsteps, and environmentals. There's also instrumental and otherworldly sound effects like menuing, character switching, or enemy destruction, which does an amazing job of injecting a sense of unnaturalness into the game's tone. Again, it is a remaster, so I assume the sound quality is a lot better this time around. The music is wonderful. It's a mixed track where certain songs are more thematic to the locations that they feature, like a Japanese-themed restaurant, while in general, a lot of what's played is very electronic, dance, and even industrial in nature. A very unique and awesome soundtrack that fits the style of Killer7. Also, the remaster on Steam comes with the option to listen to the remastered soundtracks if you buy them, so even more off-key enjoyment for my lack of ears. The voice acting is very interesting in a good way. The actors do an amazing job with injecting personality into each of their characters that's trying to be very cool for the serious tone of the game.
It's me. So you there yet?
You mean this shithole?
That's where they all hang out. Our information tells us that there's 14 of them.
And they're all fun.
Into an old man. I went to see the devil. Now it's your turn.
Oh, my pupil. So tenacious of life. Guess I have to kill you again.
Shut up. Before you run out of breath.
I think my personal favorite does go to Harmon because of how absolutely raspy and serious his voice sounds. A sort of old man vibe, but also sounds like a person you do not want to f*** with.
Is that the only thing you do, Mr. Fukushima, the founder?
But the voice acting also has that weird uncanny feeling that most Japanese-based games have when it comes to the English dub. It's a mix of unnatural delivery, along with very weird speaking lines.
The government's interest was his interest.
That's our job. That's what we do.
He's making a move for the interest of the country, an assassin's job too.
Who are you, really?
I have a feeling this might be a result of the script originally being written in Japanese and translated into English, but I'm not 100% certain on this. Whether or not it's intended, it does make Killer7's voice cast very unique, and I got used to it to the point that it just sounds right for me.
There's no fooling them, no sir!
Overall, a bit old in its visual tech, but the art style and sound make it seem like it hasn't aged a day. and a reminder that even when modern games do their best to look cutting edge so that people can be happy that their 5090s were worth spending all of their child support money on, older games can still hold their own with art style and flair. Also helps that there's an HD remaster.
Ah, Garcian. How long has it been?
It's a weird game, and I think Killer7 has always maintained its cult status throughout the years because it really doesn't feel like anything else. I don't think it's a game for everyone though, because combat, story, and even just its cel-shaded presentation isn't something that would normally hook people from the get-go. But what you do get is something that's extremely unique and full of identity. A politically charged story with highly dramatic killers who we know little about, a very basic feeling but visceral combat with some adventure-like puzzle solving, a very high contrast art style that is visually distinct. It's a package that you can only find in Killer7. It may not be the game that you could easily recommend on its individual parts alone, but you really just won't find anything as weird and serious like Killer7. A game that holds up in my book, and a must-play as one of the industry's most offbeat titles that has aged gracefully. But that's gonna do it for today, guys. Thanks for sticking around. There will be more games to play and more videos coming soon, so please stay tuned if you'd like to see more. But for now, I'll see you all next time.